So the quilt I'm making today is made up of 2 different blocks. Now it is a pattern where you get the blocks and you get the sew pattern and the cuts, but inside of that is an improvisational style of what to use, which fabrics at which times. So for me, this is a combination of a pattern and the way that I like to work, which is improvisational quilting. So I think it's quite a nice hybrid of both, and I've really had a fun time designing a pattern that will integrate that way of you being able to use your color instincts and have a play with what you've got. So to start with, I've got 5 different features. So this for me is made up of 3 prints and then 2 block colors, but yours can be made up of all different prints or all different block colors, whatever you prefer, any combination. The particular designs that I have chosen are on the designs and colorways are on the information sheet. I also have a white, which is like the main backing color really from all of them, in all of them. So you again could choose something else if that's what you'd prefer, like say choose the red as the main backing, but I quite like the idea of the white because it makes these come forward more, so you do see these prints a lot more. But again, have a play and experiment. My quilt backing is this beautiful black, which is it's a grey, sorry. It is a cotton, but it's called a linen look, so it actually has these beautiful little checkery marks on it. Grey is quite hard to see, isn't it? But we'll get to that later. So the pattern is made up of 2 different block styles, and the size that I'm working with today is going to be 3 blocks across by 4 blocks down, which makes about a lap size quilt. So that means that I have 12 blocks in total. I am also going to add in some strips of just white, like inset bits at different parts through, and it just makes the quilt a bit wider, but also adds in more of those white blocks. So the quilt approximately is about 100 by 120-ish. As you will probably start to notice, my measuring and my cutting and my sewing, while I use a ruler and a blade and that sort of thing, I am not perfect about my seam allowances because I like it when it has that little fluid look where it's not quite perfect. And that is completely fine in a quilt. I am suggesting a 1/4 inch or 1/2 centimetre seam allowance, but don't worry, don't unpick your seams if yours is a bit bigger, because at the end of the day, this is some fabric sewn up and made to cuddle and cozy up loved ones. So here we have 2 different blocks that we're going to be working on. This one is sort of a log cabin style in a way, where I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it rotates out in that that shape. But as you'll see from the 2 that I have, the same is completely different look depending on what fabrics you put where. And so that then means in throughout your whole quilt, it's going to be completely a different look. So you won't even notice that they're all, each block is a log cabin. So the other block I have is this sort of lineal stripes sort of block. And this, I like the combination of these thinner bits and making the blocks sort of break up a bit with the thin play-throughs each other. It has a lot more white in it too. The easiest way is to make 1 set of block A and then cut and make 1 set of block B. And that just makes it easier for all your cutting and laying things out. So I'm going to start with block A, which is the log cabin style quilt. So to begin, we've got our 5 feature pieces. We need 10 centimeters of each piece, of each 5, at width of fabric. So mine is 112 wide. All of this is in the instructions. I'll turn this way actually. At this stage, I am actually going to cut all of them for the other blocks as well, just to make it a bit easier, so that these are all cut, and then you can put them away. So there's colour 1. Make sure you trim off your edges so they're nice and neat. Nice and squared off. I'll just do 2 at the moment and then do the others in a bit. And it depends on your rotary blade how thick your layers of fabric can be to cut through. So this one here is quite sharp, and the size of the blade, I actually can cut through quite a lot of layers at once, which is really handy for this. This one here is a bit more flexible, but doesn't cut through as many layers. So it's good to have different tools for different projects. All right, so we're going to cut 2 strips at 10 centimeters and 1 strip at 7 centimeters. Now we're going to cut our strips as the cutting instructions say. Remove any selvages that have large features on them. These do have the beautiful designer's name on the side, which I would sometimes use, but not quite for this project, I don't think. Now we're going to sew our pieces together. So I like to arrange them out, and at this stage, if you follow the diagram, it will tell you this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have 11 pieces, and we're going to sew it around in this order. What you can do before you start, and at each layer if you want, is you can go through and decide if you want the colors that you've got for each piece. I actually don't mind having the same of one print because, as you can see, they actually look very different depending on which bits you've cut up. But you might decide you want all 5 colors, all 5 of the features on each block, but just to move them around. So that's something you can decide. Alternatively, you could just sort of shuffle them, and each block you sew, you could just choose as you go. What I do is I will string piece before I start. So I'll sew block 1 to block 2, and they'll be sewn together. Also block, let's say block 5 and 6, you string piece them together. Block 8 and 9, if you string piece them together, and then 10 and 11. And then that just makes it easier for the next process. So now I'm going to sew them together, and you can do yours as well. And then once we've done them, I don't cut them, like I don't trim them as I'm going. I'll just sew them all, and then I'll iron them, and then I'll trim them all after. So I've made all of block A. I thought I'd just show them to you. You will maybe notice going through, some of them have the same bits in the same spots. So this is the orange, but that's okay, because once it goes through, you actually won't see it, notice that at all. This one, I accidentally sewed them the wrong way. That's okay too. I don't mind, because they were the same size, then they both fit in. But that's completely fine. Like, don't unpick it if you make that error. So these are all of block A. I've got 6 of them, and now we're going to sew block B. Now I have already cut the fabrics as per the instruction sheet, and so I'm going to lay them out, and we'll start sewing. So this is piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if when you make this block it isn't quite the size needed, you can put some white at there or on there as you want. So maybe along there is probably where you might need it. My measurements are that you shouldn't need it, but I'm just letting you know if you do need it. So this is piece 5. This is piece 2. That's piece 6. That's piece 4. 3. Making sure I've got them all correctly laid out. 8. 1. 5. And 9. So now I am going to, as with the first one, string piece what I can together just to make it easier. So piece 1 with 2, and then lay them. Piece 3 with 4, and then piece 5, 6 and 7 together, and then we'll join them together after. So I'm going to start with doing that. You can at this stage, so you can see there's only 4 colors per each cut, but you can arrange them around and make them how you like, play with that, or make it a bit more of a lucky dip. So as with block A, whatever you feel like. now I have all my quilt pieces, quilt blocks, and I am going to arrange them and see how I like the layout. I don't have a quilt wall, but I just use a wall in my house. It's much easier, I find, on a wall than on the floor, so if possible. So I'm going to start just by sticking them to the wall. I just use some washi tape, which I find is better for my walls, for the paint on my walls, than sticky tape. Remember when I said that if some blocks are a little bit bigger and some are a little bit smaller, to not trim them and to not worry? And the reason is because at this point you might find that they actually can fill the space with each other. So right now I'm just putting them out and laying them and seeing how I feel about them. And that one is a bit smaller, so I will either add something or see if there's a bigger piece. I do actually think I made 7 of that block, so that's something good too. Now this is when I start to get to the thinking. I can still just lay them all out and rearrange them, but as I do each one, it's a good idea to ponder it. Do I want those 3 reds all in a row, or is that a bit much? Just close the window. At this stage also, I've got my pieces of white insert, so they're going to run from across the 120 centimetre length rather than the 100 centimetre length. So this is going to be the 120 centimetre length, so it's 4 by 3. Yes, just thinking in my head if I'm telling you the right thing. So I'm just going to put these in. This one is a bit longer than so I wanted one that is as long as 2 blocks, so I'll have to cut that one, and then 2 that are each as long as 1 block. So this is where you see my really improv style does come into play a lot more. Maybe we'll put that here. wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and one of the things they say is to never put your back to the audience, but I don't know if that's always so right. And so you just keep having a play, laying out, and you'll end up with some pieces that are a little bit smaller and some that are a little bit bigger. And at this stage, what I will do is then I'll note which ones when I'm on the quilting wall, and I'll just add that before I block them, piece them all back together. So let's see how we're going. What I'm doing right now, I'm doing to show you the process. I'm not necessarily, this won't necessarily be the end layout in my mind, because sometimes I can take quite a while working through that, and I like to stand back and play and see. So what you're seeing me do now is not exactly how I do it when I'm doing it on my own. But what I am going to do is have a look at how the flow of the colours goes through, but also how the white might play through it, and if I need to put some more white into it. Totally fine at this stage to build it out with some big white squares. I am trying to keep this to a specific pattern for you, but I want to let you know that you can push those possibilities past that pattern, which is the fun part of quilting and creating your own quilt. So I'm going to stand back and have a little look. What I'm noticing here is I really love this play of this sort of L shape with this L shape and how that goes in. I love that little bit, so I'm going to try and keep that. So I want to go 3 down. I'm going to add another one, and because that is that way, it's nice for me to add this long. I hope it's in the camera screen. Put it upside down. This long piece here. Oh, yes, you can see it. But looking at it, it might be better over here, some more red over here. Let's see what else red, what other red I've got. Again, this is a long way, so I like to, oh, this is a horizontal, so maybe having a portrait version might be nice. There's one there as well, so maybe we'll play off it and put it over here. But this is, at this part you can see that even though we had the same blocks, the log cabin blocks, and even though some of them have the same, so orange, the same, like lots of squares of orange sort of thing, the same of that, you don't notice it anymore because it's all broken up. Let's add the last 2. This one here. And if you find that there's a block that you don't like, once you've added it up here, go and make another one. You've got enough extra pieces. or you could have a big piece of white block. Consider that an option too, because the white is actually like a breakup point in there. So if you want more white throughout it, you could definitely do that. I'm just going to put the last one in. Let's step back and have a look. One other thing, before I turn this little video off, is I find it really useful to take photos of this process while I'm going through it. Two reasons. One is that when I then take it off the wall and take it to my sewing machine, I can remember where it all went to a degree. But the other reason is I actually find it easier to view it and for my mind to get into seeing it when it's in a frame. So the camera creates like a frame around it, and that helps me to decide. So I'll often stand back and take a photo and then look at it on my camera. So try that as well. So I've sewn together the quilt top. Some of you who look closely might notice that it did change from when it was on the wall, mostly just due to the picking up sewing sort of errors. This bit here, which I really loved, didn't evolve, and I might unpick this one and shift it up, because it actually ends up there is a bit of extra, so that oh no, that won't work, something's gone wrong here, but that's all right. I'm going to I'll shift it up a bit, and so then it'll have that different sort of shape. This bit here, which I loved, got sewn the wrong way. Those things are okay. Like, once it's all stitched together and quilted, I'm not going to notice a difference, and absolutely no one else will even know. So that's okay. If you were really, really like, oh no, I love that bit, then unpick it and do it again. That's okay. So choose what works best for you. Now we're going to make the backing, which will involve 3 feature strips throughout the whole piece, and these will be mostly grey, like the backing fabric, but I like to have some little of the front features within it. So I'm going to do 2 7 centimeters and 1 10 centimeter strip, but that's just what I've chosen. Doesn't matter either way. Anyway, doesn't make a difference which way you go. So this, again, like the others, is just a matter of playing with placement. I do like, when I'm doing this sort of thing, that they're not all the same, so I quite like the idea of cutting, changing up the proportions a tiny bit. On the front, I wanted it to be that similar set size, but this is a completely different, like when you look at the back compared to the front, while it has the same colors, it actually can be its own composition in a different way. So I might just strip piece some together, and what I need to end up with is 2 strips that are 7 centimeters wide by 120 long, and 1 that is 10 centimeters wide by 120 long. So work out what makes sense, what works best for what you're starting to play with. If it's not quite long enough, you can add something in. So I could do that sort of thing to bring that. This is a fun way to do some bit of improv quilting. So I think I might do that, or put this one, grey one, back in. I do think I'll go with this one. Yeah, that's a good piece. So I'm looking at pattern placement as well. I really like that bit that's come through. So I'm going to strip piece a few of these, and then I'm going to join them to the bigger blocks of the backing. Once you have your 3 strips, so a 10 and 2 7s, you can iron them and then neaten up the edges. So trim them as needed and cut them to approximately 120 centimeters long. And now we're going to join them with the backing fabric, the rest of the backing. So we want our backing to be 120 by 100. I want my 10 and my 7 to be joined together. Which one do I like together best? I think this one. Might turn that around though. It's getting long to have on my camera now, isn't it? Yeah, I like this layout. So I'm going to join those together first, and then I'll start by this one here. Then I am going to join these to my whole black backing pieces. So I have 3 pieces that are 30 centimeters wide, by approximately, it doesn't matter, this doesn't matter too much, by 120 centimeters long. The backing fabric is 280, so if you cut it in half, then you'll have a little bit extra on either sides, or measure it out and then you'll have one extra piece on one extra big piece. So I am going to sew these together now to end up with a full backing piece. Quilt back. So it's got the three feature strips. I put a 7 and a 10 width and then a 7 width. So now what I will do is iron them really well, trim them off, put the border on this, and then baste, then hand quilt, and then do the binding, and then my quilt will be done. The hand quilting and the binding actually are sometimes the longest part, but they're the beautiful slow part where you can sit down and enjoy that. It's not meditative, but it's mindful practice. So enjoy every aspect of it really, and I'm going to show you the next steps.